Hey, Jenny Splitter. Good to see you here. And we're just going to give everybody that's signed up just a couple of minutes to get in. We'll start at probably 7:34, 7:35. You guys are super prompt, and we really appreciate it. But we got to give the slackers a chance. Come on. AKA also people putting their kids to bed or trying to shove a few bites of dinner into their face before this happens, which is exactly where I was before this. Oh, excellent, David. Good to see you. And Catherine, thanks for joining us. We will be starting in just a couple of minutes. We're waiting for a few more people to join us. Then Jessica and I will kick things off. But we're super glad to have you all here. And I'll reiterate this throughout the presentations that Jessica and I will be giving. But if you have questions, please just put them in the chat. And there'll be a Q&A portion at the end. We'll try to answer as many of them as we can. And I don't see any reason why we won't be able to answer them all. To answer Joan's question right off the bat, there will be a video of the presentation that you will have access to once this is done. So you can watch us in living color again and again and again. So not to worry, absolutely. Oh, and another Catherine joined us, I think. Perfect. Awesome. All right, everybody. Thanks for joining us this evening. We're going to get things started. I know you have other places to be and other things to do later tonight. But thank you so much for joining us for the RAMW's food photography webinar with myself, Nevin Martell, and my good friend and an expert food photographer, Jessica von Dop DeJesús. And we will be here with you for the next hour and a half. I'm going to do a presentation. Jessica will do a presentation, and then there will be plenty of time for you to ask as many questions as you like. If you have questions that come up, please, over the course of the presentations, just put them into the chat, and we will get to them at the end, or if one of us is really on it, we will get to it while we're actually speaking in the midst of our chats. But if you haven't already, please follow both of us on social. You can find Jessica on Instagram and Twitter at Dining Traveler, or online at diningtraveler.com. And you can find me on Instagram and Twitter at Nevin Martell, and online at nevinmartell.com. You may have seen my work in the Washington Post, DCist, City Paper, Washingtonian, Nat Geo, Travel and Leisure. And I've written a couple of cookbooks, one for Founding Farmers and another for Red Truck Bakery. And my esteemed co-host tonight, you may better know her by her nom de plume, which is The Dining Traveler. And again, that website is diningtraveler.com. She's the author of the wonderful book, which I can say because I have it right here in my bookshelf, The Dining Traveler Guide to Puerto Rico. And you might have seen her writing in Travel Channel, Eating Well, Washington City Paper, Southern Living, and Telemundo. And I highly recommend following Jessica on every platform she's on. I know she has a YouTube goal right now, so definitely check out her YouTube channel. But just a fantastic storyteller, both on the page and as a visual storyteller. And I know she's has a lot to share tonight. She's going to be talking a bit about equipment, editing tools, and some other things that will help take your food photography up to the next level. But I'm going to start off tonight, and I'm just going over 15 rules for shooting memorable food pictures, because you really do need to kind of follow all these steps to get really great photos. Sometimes great photos happen by accident. Mostly they happen by design and by a lot of hard work, a lot of planning, a lot of trial, a lot of error. I'm going to try to make the process as simple as possible. My presentation is kind of focused on the techniques and kind of just the practice of taking photography. I'll let Jessica kind of handle some of the kind of more technical stuff in terms of the camera and the editing gear. But these are the tricks, tips, tools, and techniques you need to take next level food photography. What I always say is that good food photos start with strong natural light. There's really no replacement for it, but we'll talk about what you can do if you have to shoot with artificial light. But strong natural light is really the gold standard. And you want a warm indirect light, which means shooting near a window or outdoors, but outside of the sun's direct glare. Now, if you're just going into a restaurant as a customer, a member of the press, an influencer, whatever, sometimes it can be hard to be in a restaurant at times of day when there is natural light. Maybe they're not open for lunch, maybe they're not open before service and you can't get in there for whatever reason. But if you can get in there during natural light hours, that is ideal. The most ideal are the 2 golden hours of the day. And that's roughly the hour following sunrise, which can be a very tough time to get into a restaurant unless you're going to a bakery or coffee shop, but it's possible. Or the hour preceding sunset, which also comes with its own challenges in the restaurant environment because that's happy hour, that's right before dinner service, that's when things are really hopping and happening. But if you can take advantage of that golden hour or those golden hours, your pictures will go up a couple of notches without you doing anything. The sunlight at that time of day has a really beautiful golden, as per the name, diffuse, warm quality to it. So it really gives this glowing kind of almost ethereal quality to imagery. It just softens things a little bit. You know, back in the day in Hollywood, they would have said it puts a little Vaseline on the lens. You know, it just makes things, it just gives them a different brightness and a lightness that you don't get when the sun is too harsh or too direct. And I do want to say, like, there can be too much of a good thing. You know, light is great, natural light is wonderful and the ideal, but harsh direct sunlight produces glare. So your plates are just going to blow out, you know, white tablecloths, white napkins, that kind of thing. And white components in dishes, be it a marshmallow, whipped cream, vanilla ice cream, whatever it is, just they turn into these just like bombs of whiteness in your picture, and you lose all the shadows, you lose the depth, you lose the context, you lose the nuance really to them. So if you have that kind of light, that harsh, direct sunlight, figure out a way to diffuse it. And that can be pulling a curtain over a window if you're shooting next to a window. It can be something as simple as someone holding up a dish, a white dish towel, a white napkin to serve as a diffuser, or you can buy what's called a translucent reflector. And later on in the chat, I will put a link to one of those that's available on Amazon, super cheap. You don't need to buy that one. It's just to show you what it is. That essentially takes the light and breaks it down into a much more beautiful diffuse light, and will, again, kind of mimic that light that you would get during the golden hour. Now, if you can't shoot in natural light and you must shoot in artificially, the number one rule is, like, you never use the flash. To this day, when I'm scrolling through Instagram, or certainly when I have to go on Yelp, which I don't want to even get into that conversation, you know, looking at food photos that have been shot using flash is a crime against the art and the hard work and the craftsmanship that goes into making the food that's being photographed on the plate or in the glass, because it blows out everything. It changes the color of the food. It flattens everything out because there's just one uniform light in a very short period of time. So it flattens out the whole image. So you lose there's a single kind of shadow. you lose a lot of the nuance of the photography. You lose the detail of it, and you lose the beauty of it. Instead, use professional lighting with a diffuser on it. And these are lights that provide a continual source of light. Lume Cube makes great handheld lights that are very affordable. Again, you don't need to buy Lume Cube, but if you look at Lume Cube online, and I'll put a link into the chat later, they make little cubes or they make panels, both of which come optionally, but in this case, necessity, you need it, with these diffuser kind of caps that go across them. Because if not, again, it'll just provide a sharp, direct, harsh light. Get a couple of the Lume Cubes, get a couple of the panels. They're great. They're handheld. If you're with another diner, or you're with a friend, or you're with someone from the restaurant, or a PR agent, or whoever it is, get them to hold the lights for you while you use your camera or you use your phone to take the picture. You can even, this another trick that I've always used in restaurants, like people laughed at me at first, then everybody copied me, is, get somebody else to turn on the flashlight on their phone, wrap their phone in a white napkin or a dish towel from the kitchen, and that's going to provide a steady, diffuse source of light so you can photograph your food and it'll come out nicely. It won't come out as nice as it would be if you shot on a DSLR in natural light during golden hour, but it'll shoot nicely enough that you'll feel good about posting it on social media. It's not the kind of thing I would recommend providing, to a publication or using, in kind of advertising or anything like that. Usually you want a higher quality of photo for that, but for social media, it's totally fine. One of the big things that you need to do before you take your photo is set everything up before you have your dish or drink in hand. Now, if you're a diner at a restaurant, that's making sure that your table is all set up before the server brings your order. If you're lucky enough to be there and they're providing you the food to shoot, figure out where in the restaurant you want to be shooting, pick your location, then figure out the lighting for it, and then figure out the look and the feel of the shot. So have all the accessories in place, all of the, little bits and pieces on the table that you want. If you have somebody serving as a hand model, have them ready. If you want to have a whole bunch of people seated at the table, so you can get, the overhead shot with all the hands grabbing for the dishes, make sure everybody's sitting down. The food or the drink is the final piece of the equation. Everything else has a longer shelf life than the food or the drink. So have everything set up. Now, if you're using natural light, you have to remember that it's a fly by your seat of your pants kind of a deal, because, there could be a sudden thunderstorm, a cloud might come in front of the sun, and the light that you thought you had so perfect for your shot might change, which might mean either you have to reset your shot or you just have to wait until the light reverts to it how it was when you originally set up your shot. So you do have to be flexible, but by and large, you should set up your scene before your dish or drink or dishes or drinks arrive. And that's because you need fresh food or a fresh drink to shoot. Food and drinks lose their looks incredibly quickly. Sauces congeal, produce wilts, meats gets really, really dull and dead looking. Icy components melt, smoke dissipates. So you're really going to want to shoot that food within the first couple of minutes of it coming out of the kitchen or coming out of the bar and it landing on your table. Because even though for the minutes after that, a lot of foods will still look good. If you were just looking at it as a diner, you'd be like, damn, I still want to eat that hamburger. Damn, those fries look awesome. But if you look at it on your viewfinder, if you look at the finished image on your phone or on your laptop, you'll notice all the little details that just don't look fresh. And that's not appealing when you're kind of when you're really just trying to show the craveability of a dish and the freshness of it. This also might mean that whoever you're working with, if you're not just dining and you're not just shooting your own meal, if you're working with a restaurant, either for a publication or as an influencer or whatever, they may have to make the same dish for you or the same drink for you several times, or they may have to refresh parts of it, like a garnish might need to be redone, or if there's like a piece of action that's done to it, they might have to remash the guacamole because the guacamole is starting to get brown, or they might have to add a new mint sprig to the julep because the original mint sprig has wilted. And, people, that can be annoying for people. People can get a little frustrated, like, oh, this food waste, waste of money. Your goal is to get the best possible picture of their dish or drink. And, sometimes a few dishes or drinks have to die in that process, not just one. Obviously be conscientious. I'm not advocating for food waste at all. I think that, if you can minimize it, that's great. But at the end of the day, you're there to get the best shot possible for them, your client, your social media feed, whatever. And sometimes that does mean redoing things or remaking things, or just kind of refreshing them in some way, shape, or form. Beautiful plating is so key, whether that's the plate that it appears on or how it appears on the plate. And that starts with good looking and very clean dinnerware, flatware, and glassware. You can fix some smudges and spills and spots. Others you can't. If there's a big, smear on your wine glass, like, it's going to be a real pain to edit it out, and you're going to spend more time editing out than you would have than you just said, would you mind putting the wine in a different glass, or, wiping off the smudge, whatever the case is. Keep an eye out for dirt and specks and spots and spills. You'll save yourself a lot of trouble in editing. And like I said, some of those problems aren't even surmountable in editing, so you might lose a shot that you really need. Creatively place the components. These are both overhead shots, but I do love how in the bottom shot, the chef took a really artful turn with his sauce work. And in the top, I just love the bullseyeing of the duck egg on the carbonara sfolina. These pictures don't do this, but accentuate dimensionality. These dishes work well as overhead shots. And in fact, if you shot them from the side, they would be far less dramatic. But if you were going to shoot, say, a hamburger or a slice of cake, think about, instead of shooting it from above, don't do that. Instead, unless there's like something really beautiful on top of the cake, shoot them from like a 45-degree angle or full on the side. That way you show the scale of the dish or the drink, and you get a sense of all the different components, all the layers of the cake, the burger, all the different condiments coming off of it and different toppings. The one thing I would say is that when you're out there and you're plating and you're having the chef or the bartender or whomever put stuff together, don't have them change the dish so much to obtain the best possible photo, because you can put it in a different plate and you can do the nicest version of it, and you can pile things around it that normally might not be on the table because you want to fill your frame with beautiful stuff. But if you have a dish that you put up either on your social media or on the restaurant social media, or as an advertisement, God forbid, or in the press, and it doesn't look anything like what the customer gets when they come into the restaurant, they may be wowed by it when they see it and they may crave it, and then they will feel nothing but disappointment and frustration when they come into the restaurant and they say, wait, but the picture you show online is like, so much more grandiose, and there's so many more components, and it looks so much better. And well, yeah, we just did that for the picture. Like, that's not okay. You can do the very best version of the dish or the drink, but if the drink doesn't come in a flaming skull, don't serve it in a flaming skull in the picture online, or else everybody who walks in will be like, give me my flaming skull and my money back. And it just doesn't end well. Good location is key. I touched on that before in terms of choosing the location before you even begin shooting, but you can use the location as a way to give the viewer insight into the pace, atmosphere, sensibility, vibe of the restaurant, or just the experience they're going to have. It can show off, visual elements of the restaurant. I like the shot of the cornbread in the top left, because that gives you a sense like, oh, this is going to be like kind of a rustic, maybe it's a farm to table vibe. I like the shot on the bottom right, which is by Scott Suchman, which is shot at the pass in front of the kitchen at Unconventional Diner. It just gives a sense of, it feels like a diner, but maybe it's a little fancier than a regular diner, because that looks like a damn good chicken and waffles. And use the location as a way to draw people into the restaurant, give them a sense of what they'll be experiencing, and give them a sense of the place and the people behind it. So the location is really, really key. clean up your backgrounds. I can't say this enough. Um, Backgrounds are the bane of a photographer's existence. You know, even tonight, like I look at my video screen and I want to scoot over. I'm like, oh, that picture behind me, it looks like it's sprouting in my head sometimes. You want to get rid of the visual distractions and noise in your photography. And that can be accomplished by moving your subject, you know, moving the dish or the drink, moving yourself. You know, you might have to move around, get a different angle, you know, be in a different place. It might mean asking things in the restaurant to be moved if you have that power. Sometimes you don't, or sometimes they won't, but you really want to take a look. And, you know, photographers call it chimping sometimes, when you take a picture and then you look down at your shot to see what you got. Keep checking what you got. See if there is things in the background, are things in the background that are, you know, just throwing you off. They draw the eye, but in the wrong way. And then, like I said, think about moving the subject, your dish or your drink, yourself, you know, think about shooting from a different angle. Uniform backgrounds are great. For example, these cookies are shot at Sticky Fingers Bakery in Columbia Heights. They've got these really fun, poppy, pink, like banquettes that face the window. So, you know, you've got great light, natural light on the cookies. And in the background, you've got this kind of cool, diffused, it's almost kind of sparkly at the restaurant, but when you shoot it with the aperture that I did, which I think was 2.8, something like that, maybe, it was, you know, it just kind of fades into this cool pinkish glow in the background. And walls are great for that. Floors are great for that. Tabletops, even this tabletop, if you look down, you can see kind of a hint. It's almost these kind of boomerang type pattern on the table. Look for uniform backgrounds. And like I said, think outside the box. Maybe sometimes you put the plate on the floor or the drink on the floor. If you do that, don't forget to wipe down the floor. There is nothing more disgusting than looking at a food photo and you're like, oh, that's beautiful tile that it's on. And then you notice like the soft imprint of somebody's like foot next to the dish. Kind of really throws you off. And I do see that occasionally still. It's just like, ah, come on, amateur hour, people. But the thing with a wall or a surface, you know, wooden table, if you're in the kitchen, you know, the sheet pans are awesome. You know, like they can have such great patina to them. The steel counters, you know, they have that nice kind of like haloed scratching on them. You know, just look around. It can be also a great backdrop for if you're shooting not just the food or a drink, but like a subject at the restaurant. You know, it can really make the person really pop out too. And don't be afraid of negative space. I love negative space. The space that surrounds the central image, that where there's nothing really there. Usually it's, you know, some sort of uniform color or generally uniform pattern. Because if your picture is going to be used for an editorial purpose, you know, like a magazine cover, photo spread, that kind of negative space is, you know, something that the editor will need in order to place text, logos, that kind of thing around it. But it can also be good if you're going to use the picture for, you know, on social and you want to put some, you know, slap a little, you know, some text on it or an emoji or a little GIF or whatever. You know, if your image is too crowded, if you put those types of things on it, it just looks too busy. So embrace negative space, embrace like the absence of things around what you're shooting. You know, it can be really, really beautiful and really, really useful. Now, I love this photo. It's not my most technically proficient photo or the best photo I've ever taken, but I love it because that is my now 8-year-old son, who I think was about 5 at the time. And we're at A&J Dim Sum, this Northern Chinese dim sum joint on Rockville Pike. And they had just put down all the food. And, you know, I had immediately, like in the middle of a crowded dim sum service, stood on top of my chair to get a picture of like, you know, the classic overhead shot of all the food on the table. And then I saw him kind of peering over to see what had arrived and what he might get to eat. And I just love it because, you know, it gives the sense of it's a family restaurant or a family friendly restaurant. He's got his car and his Play-Doh on the table. He's just got this look, you know, his hands are on his plate. Um, it just, you know, I'm so glad that I have this picture. And it really gives you a sense of the experience of the restaurant. And it gives you a sense of, a viewer of this might say, ah, I can imagine taking my family to this restaurant for dim sum for brunch one day. Um, so that's why I say think beyond the plate or the glass, accessorize scenes with, you know, the dishes, of course, the drinks, of course, but people, you know, shoot a live dinner, you know, pose it, but shoot a live dinner. A lot of restaurants like doing shots where the dish will be shown as it kind of both as the composed dish and then with the various ingredients about it, maybe some of the herbs that go into it, maybe some of the vegetables, you know, just to give people a sense of what goes into what they're eating. And then use your photographs as a way to create a setting that implies the experience that'll be happening at a restaurant, you know, whether that's dinner with friends, lunch on a run, you know, a leisurely breakfast, whatever the case may be. Um, these kinds of shots are great because they're wish fulfillment shots. People see a shot, they say they wish they were there, and then they want to go there, and that's a really powerful message or, you know, kind of emotion to conjure for people when it comes to food photography. I quickly want to go over the rule of thirds, which if you'll see here in these three images, it's two sets of bisecting lines, and you're going to concentrate on the 4 points, the top left, the top right, the bottom left, and the bottom right, where those lines intersect. Our eyes and our mind, for whatever reason, find great beauty when things fall into those four quadrants. It's just that is literally pleasing to our eye. Our eyes take great pleasure in those 4 points. And so you'll see, for example, bottom right shot, you know, it's pure yolk porn there. You know, it's a hard focus on the yolk, the split open egg, and everything else, the focus falls off and softens after that. So you're really drawn to that bottom left-hand corner. It's beautiful. That just accomplishes one. But then if you look at the message in a bottle, you know, the top left of the falls onto the tip of land that's coming out. The top right is the middle of the neck of the bottle, and the bottom right is the middle of the message itself. So it really hits three key points to that image. And likewise with the muffins, you'll see the top left is right on the coffee cup or the teacup, and then the bottom right is dead smack in the middle of the best lit side of the chocolate muffin. But even so, you'll see the fork, which kind of leads you into the image very nicely there. That intersects with the bottom left-hand corner, and the top of the muffin in the back and the chocolate chip there, that intersects with the quadrant up there. You can put this setting on in your phone, and a lot of cameras allow you to do it as well. Just go to your camera settings on most phones, and you can set it up. Certainly on the iPhone, you can. You can set it up on your camera too. Over time, you'll just kind of get used to shooting with that in mind. Your eye will just start to see the world in a rule of thirds. And you don't always have to do it. Sometimes it's good to break the rules or not follow the rules. But as a general rule, it can be very helpful in terms of helping you easily compose images as you're shooting. So just remember the rule of thirds. All right, interesting perspectives are key. I love the picture on the bottom right. That's by Scott Suchman too. Instead of just shooting Chef at the pass, he shot Chef through a wall of wine at the restaurant, and, you know, gives you a better sense of the place. It's a more vibrant, atmospheric shot. Likewise with the milkshake on the top, there's a couple of ways that milkshake could have been shot. You could have shot it from the side and seen the beautiful color of whatever the milkshake was underneath, the cresting of the whipped cream and the kind of dappling of the jimmies on top, and then, you know, the gumball there with the straw rising up. But I like this one because it's following the straw down. Like you almost can hear like the sound when you look at this picture. So I would say when you're shooting something, especially something like a milkshake, which has multiple options, some dishes or drinks really just want one or two of kind of the main three, which is overhead, 45 degrees, and then the full side shot. But experiment with different shots, come at it from different angles, turn it around, really allow yourself to play with your subject. Pick up the plate, pick up the, pick up the glass, move them around, and then move yourself around. Sometimes it's really cool to get down really low and shoot something up, like a burger. Shooting a burger up makes it look monstrous. You can really kind of play with scale and visual sense that way. Remember just to pick the subject, the angle that accentuates the subject's best attributes. As my wife is always saying when I'm taking a picture of her, hold the camera higher, hold it higher, higher. And, it's the same for a dish or a drink. Like, you want to show it off, you want it to look good. You're not there to take it down a notch. Yes, make your shot interesting, maybe even unconventional, but remember at the end of the day, you want to make that dish or drink look good. You want to make people say, I want to drink that, I want to eat that. Now, speaking of that, the easiest emotion to inspire with food in food photography really is desire. It's that craveability. I want that now in my belly, in my mouth, whatever. But I always try to think about going beyond the kind of main gut reaction and trying to imply or evoke a little bit of more than that. So for example, in these two shots, I love the one at the top. There's an intimacy to it. There's half a bottle of wine, two glasses there. Who's meeting? Partners, tristers, friends, who's getting together. But there's an intimacy implied by the two glasses. They're close together. Just like below, this implies like a big over the top dinner. It's big slab of meat with a big knife right there in the plate. You can see the big glass of red wine coming up to the woman's lips at the left side of the frame, and through the glass you can see her, I believe it's an Yves Saint Laurent handbag on the table. So you look at that and you're like, oh yeah, this is going to be like one of those dinners where I just put down the credit card. I don't think about what it's going to cost or how many calories I'm going to eat. I'm just going out for a big steak dinner. It's a baller night. And like above, there's a quieter sensibility to the emotion in that picture. But think about playing around with emotion and what kinds of emotions you want people to experience, either because you want them to mimic the experience that you had in the restaurant if you're just documenting it, or you're trying to create a sense of emotion that you want people to imagine they'd be having when they are coming to your restaurant or a restaurant that you're writing about or otherwise documenting. Action. I love action. Action is so key. That means pouring on a sauce, lighting things on fire, grating on truffles, mashing the guacamole. In this case, grating fake wasabi, pouring a shot, and tapping on powdered sugar to souffle. It really brings process and people to life. When you have these shots, you get to show off the people that are making the food. You get to show off what the experience is like before you eat the food. You get to evoke the excitement of creation, the excitement of enjoyment. Action is just so key. It can be hard because, you might have to ask again somebody to do something multiple times to get the right shot. You don't always have that luxury if you're just documenting things in a restaurant as they're unfolding. But it can never hurt to ask somebody to do it again, or just to fake it in a way that it looks like it's still happening. Or just say, hey, can you tell me before you do this what it's going to look like so I can figure out my shot first? People don't mind because, if you're shooting somebody in a restaurant, they want to look good too. It might take them out of service for a second too longer than they might like, but it's always worth asking. Say, how's it going to be? Take a practice shot, even if they're not doing it exactly the way that it's going to be done, just so you can get the tech side of the shot down. And then, there is an element of luck if you only have one chance to do it, but I'd say go for it. I love the action shots. Like I said, it brings to alive the people and the processes at a restaurant. And I think that's just invaluable. Color, I love color. I try to incorporate it in all my photography. I think it just adds a richness and lushness, pardon me, to it. Because, even the coffee in the bottom right shot, that cup of coffee would look cool even against a white background because it's got, the milk, or maybe it was half and half, kind of coming into it, dripping down. So, I mean, like that shot can work against a white backdrop, but I also like it kind of with that kind of explosion of color behind it. Not all your shots need to have color, but if there's not color in a dish or a color, figure out how to add color. Maybe adding a garnish, maybe it's changing the plating, maybe it's changing the location or the background. The food itself doesn't have to be colorful, but it's helpful if there's color in your shot. And if your food is like a kind of just a brown, dull, those kind of like carby meat tones, and think about adding color in some other way, because that'll really pop off the plate or really pop off the glass. Clarity. There's nothing worse than looking at a photo that would be good if only it had a clear subject or focal point. Not everything in a picture has to be in focus. And in fact, it's a lot of times, especially with food, it's better if it's not. But you do need a really clear point of focus. On the crab, it's like the little whiskers, the eyes in front. It's the center of the pie that's bubbling up, and that's the gooiness dripping down the side of the camembert there. You're drawn to those details. You're drawn to the eyes looking at you, the pie bubbling up, the gooiness of the cheese. The strong focal point helps that. If you don't have it, it's so frustrating. Semi-focused photos or out of focus photos drive me up the wall. Not every part of your picture has to be in focus, but there does have to be a strong focus point. Think about telling a story. This can't happen all the time, and sometimes it's easiest accomplished if you can get behind the bar in the kitchen, or have like some sort of a sit down with some of the staff or a staff member, but show the process of how a dish or drink is made. Walk people through it. All the pictures that you take or all the video you have to take don't have to go up at the same time. You can, dribble them out over a long period of time, but give people a sense of how much time, how much technique, how much work, how much expertise goes into making dishes and drinks. Because when it shows up at a table, short of an explanation, somebody just knows that they ordered it and it arrived. And you want people to know what kind of, skill, attention to detail, love went into making the dish or the drink, because it brings the food alive. It brings the experience alive. It also allows the photo to tell the story of the talent behind the food. You'll get to meet people that are making the food. It'll personalize the experience. It'll make the experience more intimate. Followers, if it's just you're shooting this just for social media, people love that. It's I love Jan, who's the woman in the bottom picture here. She was awesome. She was a pie making machine. That woman turned out like I would be sitting there fancy crimping my pies like a weak beginner, and she was pounding out the pies. She could do like 20 times as many pies as I did in a single hour. It was crazy. But it also allows you, if you're shooting for a restaurant, to kind of pull back the curtain and kind of show parts of the restaurant experience that the guest would never experience otherwise, because it happens, before or after service. The way things are made, the thoughtfulness that goes into a dish, or even just a component of a dish. If you're preserving something or pickling something or fermenting something, you can show off cool equipment that you guys use that wouldn't otherwise be seen. You can show a part of the restaurant that guests never go to, like in the walk-in or something like that. So it's really tell stories that are stories that guests don't get in front of otherwise. It's a great way of deepening the restaurant experience. It Takes Two, not just a great 80s song, but it is helpful to have a helper as someone who's going to be your hand model, someone who can hold your lights or the reflectors that I was talking about earlier. You can be focused on the technical aspects of the shot. They can be doing things like, holding that little tureen that's pouring the soup, moving the bowl to make sure it's exactly where you want it on the table. They can bring out the food and drink when it's freshest. So you're not trying to run back and forth with the food, get it there, get the shot, hold the lighting, do it all. No, if you can bring a friend along, and some of you, I've definitely eaten dinner with at least one of you, no, two of you, maybe three. That I will say, would you mind holding this light? Would you mind, putting up a reflector? Would you mind holding this dish? Would you mind, being a hand model for a second? It's super helpful. Especially if you can get into the restaurant before or after service to do some real shooting. So just see if you can bring someone along. I find that most people will work for free food. You don't really have to offer them much more than that, if that at all. Getting all the shots is key. And by that, I mean, shoot a wide variety of shots when you're there. Horizontal and vertical, close up and wide. The three that I talked about before, the kind of general angles of side shot, 45 degrees, and overhead. There's nothing worse than walking away from a shoot and then either doing your editing and thinking about what you're going to post, or like thinking about, how you want to use it for an ad or what the editor asked you for, and realizing you didn't get the shot that you need. I had like this horrible instance a few years ago where I shot a dessert for a story and sent it into my editor, and she's like, God, it's a beautiful shot, but we only use vertical shots and you only took horizontal shots. And I was like, oh my God. I mean, I had to go all the way back, get another picture. It was a huge to-do. So get all the shots so both you and anyone you're working with, the marketing team and editor, whomever, has options. And more shots are better. Get as many as you can. But and like I said, not all work. You might not want a close-up shot of certain things or an overhead shot of certain things, but get a broad variety of shots for each dish or drink or kind of element of the restaurant that you're shooting. And if you are providing these pictures to somebody else, an editor, and a marketing department, an advertising agency, whatever, always ask for the specs. DPI, that's dots per inch. That's a big deal in print. Not as much online, but if you're dealing with print, definitely ask for that. The shape of the picture, again, they wanted to use it for Instagram, square versus rectangle, Facebook versus Instagram kind of versus Twitter kind of thing. Orientation, again, that's vertical versus horizontal. Just ask what people want. They will tell you. People, when they need your photos, have even if they're not paying you for them, will always have very firm opinions of what your photos should be. So ask them what they need and give them what they want, because if you don't give it to them right in the right orientation or DPI, it could be the most beautiful picture in the world, but it just doesn't work for their needs. So let me just go over the 15 rules for shooting memorable food photos. You need strong natural light, preferably during golden hour, always diffused, warm, and indirect. But if you can't get it, use no flash. Instead, use a diffused, constant source of light, like a lume cube or a panel or something like that. Set your scene before the food comes out. That means picking your location, the lighting, and the look of the shot before the food or the drinks arrive, because fresh food becomes dead looking food very, very quickly. Even if it doesn't look dead to the eye, it'll look dead to the camera. So always work with fresh food and drinks. Think about refreshing elements of those dishes and drinks, or even replacing them if the shoot goes on for too long. Please, please, please do beautiful plating. That means both the plating itself and the dinnerware, the flatware, the drinkware that it appears in. A good location and clean backgrounds are key. They will bring to life a place and also ensure that there's nothing visually distracting behind the central focus of your picture. Think about nice composition, play around with it. Always remember the rule of thirds. That's the intersecting quadrants. Pick an interesting perspective. Don't just pick the one that comes to you to mind first. But by all means, shoot that one. But shoot some interesting perspectives. Evoke emotion. So add some heart to your pictures. Add action. Yes. Mash the guacamole. Shave on the truffles. Always include color. Remember to have clarity and a strong focal point. If you can, and this isn't going to happen with just a single picture of a dish or a drink sometimes, but tell a story if you can about that dish or the drink or the experience you'll have while enjoying it or where you'll be enjoying it. Bring along a helper if you can, or more than one, and get all the shots in the right specs. And now I'm going to turn it over to Jessica. I'm just going to stop sharing my screen here. If you give me just 1 second. All right. Jessica, are you there?
Yes, I'm here, and I also
Awesome.
put some new tips, and that's actually part of my presentation, Never Stop Learning. So I will go ahead and share a screen and show you guys my deck. So Nevin talked a little bit about the technique and light, and I'm a big supporter of natural light. And I always ask, hey, can I dine for lunch? Because I need to get that natural by the window, preferably. So I second that. And but I'm going to talk a little bit about the equipment that I use and equipment that some of my colleagues use, and also technology apps that you can use not only on if you're using a DSLR or mirrorless camera, but also if you're on the go and just taking pictures on your cell phone. So talking about equipment, so this is an image, a D750. This is the camera that I have, and it's a full frame camera. It is a big price. This is a professional grade camera, and I also use it. I do cooking videos, and I use it as well for it, and it just creates some beautiful high res images. And you can take some great photos with your cell phone, but I do think, especially if you're doing client work or if you want your photos featured in print or a magazine, they will usually ask for high res images. And although, like, you know, I have a D750, but I did actually start with a Nikon 3500, and I actually worked my way up to a Nikon, I think it was like the 5600. It was red, really cute. And I still actually have it somewhere as my backup camera. But and one of the things I do recommend is investing in a lens. Usually what they call the kit lens, the lens that comes with the camera, is the photos are never going to be of the same quality as if you do invest in a better quality lens. And definitely one of the lens that I recommend for folks to get, and this is a lens that you can get pretty much for any camera depending on your model, but it's a 50mm lens. It's what's called a prime lens. So one thing that one of the cons of it is that obviously you can zoom in or zoom out, but you know, I might be that crazy lady that you see standing on a chair taking a photo. But it does take some beautiful photos. And one of the things that I love the most about having a 50mm lens is taking photos in low light, and that it allows you to kind of bump up that ISO, which means getting more light into the image. And so it's great for that. And if you especially if you're into pastry, maybe you're a pastry chef, maybe you have and you want to work those like intricate details, perhaps a sushi restaurant, macro lens is also a really good buy. And one of the things, and obviously all these things can add up, and one of the tips that I would love to give is buying used equipment. A lot of folks, they will go into like the shiny new things, but there's different avenues that you can use. You can buy used equipment. I love B&H in New York City, and it's one of those places. And they also, you can buy it online if you look it up. You know, they sell stuff online. You can sell your old equipment to them. But it is a place, if you ever have the opportunity post-pandemic to go to New York City. They are closed. They're Orthodox, so they're closed Fridays and Saturdays. Warning, but on a Sunday, that place will be packed. But the people that work there are passionate photo people, and they will like be there with you for 20 minutes explaining any piece of gear. And I actually bought a macro lens there, a used one, for half off. The lens was $600. I bought it for $300. So if photography, especially if it's something that you don't want to get into, you know, that you like, but you're not sure if you're going to do this professionally, it's probably a good bet. I've had friends buy equipment on Facebook Marketplace. eBay is also a good place to look for used camera equipment, and also different photo stores. I haven't purchased anything from District Camera, but I've had my camera professionally cleaned there, and the folks that work there, they have one on I Street, and I think they have one throughout Virginia as well. But they're great. They're great too. Like, I've taken my camera there to be serviced. So and I'm an Nikon girl, but it all depends what your taste is. I tried to buy a Sony and I couldn't get into it. I think I see a Sony. Nevin, is that a Sony that you have back there? I can't hear you.
It's a Canon.
There's a Canon. Okay. So there's Nikon people, there's Canon people, there's Sony people. Audrey, my videographer, she shoots with Sony. Her pictures are amazing too. So I think it's all like kind of like what you grew up using and what makes you comfortable. And if you don't have a starting point, I highly recommend to go to a specialized Photoshop where those experts can kind of gauge your personality, what you're into, what you're trying to shoot, and they'll give you those best recommendations for you. So accessories, and Nevin talked about the light box. And again, it all depends what you're trying to shoot for. If you're shooting at home, if you're shooting at a restaurant, if you're doing client work on location at a restaurant. One of the things I definitely recommend getting is a tripod. I have a Manfrotto tripod, and what I love about my tripod is that it actually flips all the way down. So if I need to take a top shot, it gives me that extra stability for me to do that. And it also goes completely vertical. So for example, now a lot of folks are doing videos for IGTV or stories or TikTok, like, you know, having that capability is great as well, to be able to take fully horizontal or vertical images. Light box or hand light. Then also, as Nevin mentioned, if you don't have those, the light on your cell phone definitely work. And Nevin is not a big fan of flash. I have a flash, but I will caveat: do not use the flash on your phone. I don't even know why these people put the flash on the phone, because they're trash. But if you do a lot of, especially folks that are doing bars, and hopefully one day nightlife will be back, and you're doing events, flash, and you have to play around with the settings. That's a big thing. So probably direct photo shots won't work really well with flash, but what I found for me that works, obviously event shots, things that are in motion, and also cocktails do really well with the flash, you know, with the bar against like the drinks, the action in the back, because sometimes if you are in a very dark place and you bump up the ISO too much, what happens is that your photo turns out to be a bit grainy and it's very difficult to edit. So again, it all depends what you're doing. If you think that you're going to get into more nightlife photography, event photography, definitely recommend for you to get a professional flash. I have a Nikon flash as well. There's also other brands that are compatible with both Canon, Nikon. So again, it's up to what kind of equipment do you have. And for those who are home cooks, maybe you have a cooking blog, food blog, or that's something that you're considering getting, a photo backdrops are great. Amazon has a huge selection of them. They have the ones that look like you have this beautiful white marble countertop that you really don't have. I have that too. That you have the ones that you kind of clip, so it kind of goes, it almost gives that studio effect. So there's many that you can choose from, and those are great too, because sometimes, I mean, I have a 4-year-old, my kitchen is a mess most of the time, so it's great to use to get more of those stylized shots. Another thing that I have at home is a step stool. And sometimes I take it to shoots, like if I'm shooting for a client at a restaurant and I'm not sure, most restaurants will have it, but this is more, obviously you don't want to do this when you're going out to eat. That's kind of embarrassing. But if you are doing it for client work or even at home, just getting that, like Nevin mentioned previously, but getting that top shot where like your whole dish shows and getting that step stool so you can get enough space, because especially if you're shooting, let's say with a 50 millimeter, you're going to need more space because that prime lens will make stuff look a little bit closer. So you just have to play around with it and see what works best for you. And now I'll talk about software and apps. I love Adobe. I have actually a membership for the Adobe Creative Cloud. Actually, I love this app called Adobe Spark, where I make these cute presentations and they're all online, so you don't have to email somebody a file. But I digress. I'll stick to photos. And I use for client work and even for my own work is Lightroom and Photoshop. Lightroom, I have to say, some people love it, some people hate it. I was one of those people in the beginning that hated it because I found it more complicated. But now that I've really taken the time to get to learn it and to use it, I love how you can pretty much batch edit. And sometimes if you're on location, you're taking photos, they're pretty much going to have the same settings. So you just have to do is cut and paste those settings to all your images. And if you subscribe to Adobe Creative Cloud, the cool thing about it is that it's saved. It gives you, I forgot from the top of my head, but it does give a cloud capability. So going to the next point, to mobile, so I can start editing something on my both either on my cell phone or on my computer and be able to access it like while I'm on the road, which is great because sometimes you're on the road, you want to post something to Instagram, or you may have a client get back to you, hey, can you fix X, Y, and Z? And you're on the road, you can do that. And there is that capability with Adobe that I really love. And also a tip, if you have a friend that can hook you up, who's an employee of Adobe, they can get you a membership because the full membership is like $60 a month, but it comes with everything, with Premiere, Lightroom. So if you're doing video design work, I mean, it's great. But if you're just going to use it just for photos, it's like $10 a month for just Lightroom, or I think it's like 20 for Lightroom and Photoshop. But if you do have an employee that works there, they can give you a pretty sick discount. So call that friend that you haven't talked to in a year and ask them how they're doing and have them give you a discount. So for mobile, again, I use Lightroom. I have Lightroom on my phone. And then the other ones that I love especially for social, is VSCO, which has some amazing filters where you don't really have to, if you're on the go, you don't really want to mess around with a lot of the stuff. It plays around, and also, not that I want to fall into a social media rabbit hole, but of course you want your images. I think anything, like whether it's social media, your restaurant, you want your photos to be cohesive and have a theme that when people are like, oh, I know that, Nevin took that picture, Jessica took that picture. But it just makes it a more cohesive look. I personally, I'm Puerto Rican, so I love color. I love color in my photos. I really love those like vibrant colors that pop, but everybody has their photo identity, if I say. So it's just playing around with it. And Snapseed is another one that I really like, especially with VSCO. You can also manage the light, manage like brightness, shadows, but there's something about Snapseed that I prefer in that capability. And then storage is a big thing, because once you start taking a lot of photos, I don't even know, I think I must have like 40,000 photos at this point. Storage obviously is a huge thing. You definitely want to get an external hard drive to keep your images. But another thing that I do recommend, especially if you're starting to do this professionally, if you're trying, or if you do have a blog, or if you're an influencer, is definitely invest in a Dropbox membership, 1 terabyte. $10 a month, or Google Drive. I have both because I mean, in my other life, I'm an IT person, so I'm all about the redundancy to keep things in all sorts of different places. But I love Dropbox, linked to the cloud. And again, it makes your work accessible no matter where you are. And then key tips for me, and as Nevin mentioned before, practice. Like nobody, I mean, I look at pictures of mine of 10 years ago and I cringe. And not only shooting, but editing. And I mean, these apps get updated on the regular, so I feel that I learn something new every month, sometimes every week. So it's about practicing, getting out there, trying different angles. And the best thing about it's not like back in the day, and this is where I'm really showing my age, is that you had to like pay to develop your film and buy 35 millimeter film, and that used to cost a lot of money. But you know, the sky's the limit. You know, get yourself a 250, 56 gig card and shoot away. And even at home, like grab your pancakes, start taking pictures of pancakes in different angles. And if you look at folks that you admire on social, or in the magazines, everybody has there's no right or wrong way of doing this. You just have to pick your style and practice and hone your craft. And share, just use your social media platforms to promote your work, and that also gives you a way to measure what looks are working and which ones are not. Like, what is the feedback that is coming from your audience? And like I said before, never stop learning, because obviously with photos, gear, new stuff coming up all the time, I'm always tempted to buy buy new equipment. I'm that person. So a lot of cool stuff out there, and just keep playing with your camera, and not only your camera but also your mobile phone. Especially now, there's also so many cool features on the iPhone. I'm an Android girl, so I have a Samsung, but there's tons of cool features that you can use on your phone as well. So yeah, keep taking photos. And with that, this is me, pre-pandemic, living my best life at a restaurant. And
What a great shot.
and this is my handle, Dining Traveler. And I'm open to questions. So I'm gonna close this for now.
What restaurant was that at, Jessica?
Oh, this one is Santa Ella in Puerto Rico.
Ah, nice.
Yeah, and I love this dish, and I love like the colors in this photo.
No, beautiful and super fresh. Like, just, yeah, everything, great clarity. Such a great photo. Yeah, I would, reiterate what Jessica said. I still take pictures that I cringe over all the time. I'm still inherently unhappy with every photo I take. I have I feel like my standard keeps getting higher. So the better you get at it, the more you push yourself, which is great. But I still practice a lot too. I still fail a lot. I think failure is a part of success when it comes to photography, because sometimes you don't know what's going to work until you figure out what doesn't work. But I'm like Jessica too. I try to shoot whenever I can. I take my camera with me, when I go out. I try to shoot around the house. Sometimes it can be hard when you're cooking for a family or trying to just get food in your own belly. But, I do think, okay, if I was going to shoot this, how would I shoot it? Even if I don't get a chance to shoot it, I do think about, okay, what would I have to clean up? Like, what part of what background would work? What action might be good? What angle might be best? Start thinking about food and drink and dining experiences that way. Just kind of mull it in your mind, even if you're not going to shoot it, because then when you are going to shoot it, you'll find that you go through that process much quicker. And Jessica, like she said, just practice. That's really such a key. And I wanted to tell you guys that I uploaded a couple of recommendations in the chat for Loom products, the cubes that they have, the light panels that they have. Again, you don't need to buy those. Those are just the type of products those are the ones that I use. There's lots of similar products on the market. They're not expensive. They're pretty cheap. I also put up a link to a translucent reflector. Again, you don't need to buy this particular one. This is just to give you an idea of what the product is. Again, though, they're not very expensive. I think the kit of 5 that I put up was less than $30. And I see that Jessica has put up a couple of links here for cameras, mirrorless versus DSLR, an article there, yes, highlighting the difference between the two. And kind of before we dive into the full question session, though, please, if you have questions, start flooding the chat with them. Rick had a question, which was, do you have a clip-on light to your phone so you don't need a partner to hold it? There are definitely lighting setups that you can clip to your phone, Rick. I don't tend to use it because it, even if it's a constant source of light, it is a, it is usually a full-on direct, it almost acts like a flash, even though it's a constant source of light, because your light is coming from directly behind the lens. So I don't tend to use those, but you certainly can buy them. I believe Loom, which I put a link to, has a product like that, a clip-on for your phone. But I really do recommend, if you don't have someone to hold your phone, buy a little tripod. There are these great little tripods that you can get that are about yay high, and you can screw your light onto it, get a couple of them. That way you can position your lights without anyone needing to be there. You might look a little weird being the guy at the table with the mini tripods and the little lights taking a picture of your food, but don't worry about that, man. You're there to have a good time, get the pictures that you want and the look that you want. I never, my rule is with restaurant photography during service is I never want to interrupt other people having a meal. Like, I don't want a flash going off in their face, or I don't want to distract them from their experience, but I also don't mind just geeking out and trying to get the best possible photo. I've been on the floor in a restaurant in service trying to get a photo of a dish, or I'll be squeezed in the corner of a kitchen trying to get a picture during service, or I'll be standing over my table in the middle of service, while everyone else is eating, taking a picture. You kind of have to have no shame about it. You're in pursuit of the best picture. So as long as you're not really interrupting anyone else's dining experience, like, just go for it, man. And like I said, the little tripods are a good workaround. Another workaround, which I've used before, is, I'm an Apple user. I have an Apple Watch and an iPhone. The Apple Watch has this great functionality where you can actually control your camera from your watch. It's called the Camera Remote app. And so you can set up your camera somewhere else, look at the picture live on your phone, set a timer on your watch, and the picture will be taken. So that's great for things if you want to get a picture with a chef, but you don't have someone to take the picture. You can just prop up your phone, set up the timer on your watch, get the frame how you want it on your watch, take the picture, walk away, pick up your camera. Again, you don't need someone else for that. But if you can bring a helper along, it's great. Also, I tend to over order a lot when I go out for food photography or when I'm going to shoot my meal. It's always nice to have someone to eat it all too. Let's see here. We got another question. Oh, Jessica. Okay. Jessica recommends the Nikon 5000 series. There's a link in the chat to that. Yeah. Was that an answer to Rick, Jessica? Rick, man, you've got all the great questions tonight. Thank you. Who else has questions? What haven't we covered that you'd like to hear about, or what would you like us to follow up on? Let's see here, who's in the chat. So we have Afet, we have Amy, Danielle, David, Ellen, Jenny, Joan, Catherine, Rick, Sue, and Ed. What other questions can we answer for you guys? The one thing I would say is, we've talked a lot about using DSLR cameras tonight, or using, professional grade cameras. I shoot on my iPhone a lot for social media. I think Jessica does too, for social anyway. I don't shoot on my iPhone generally when I'm on assignment for somebody, but I won't lie, I've had pictures published in major magazines, newspapers, websites around the world that were all taken on my iPhone. You can accomplish a lot with an iPhone. I even sold pictures like back in 2010, 2011 that I shot on my iPhone, and we all know how relatively good those pictures were compared to what they could have been if they were shot on a regular camera, or if they'd been shot on today's phones. Let's see here.
Amy has a question.
Amy wants to know, how do you make a photo not look flat when shooting down? That's a great question, Amy. A lot of times the flatness comes because there's one single source of light that has not been reflected or bounced in any way. So the way that you can do that is, let's say you're shooting at a table next to a window. You set up your dish, drink, whatever, on the table, the chair, whatever you happen to be shooting on next to the window. You've got your single source of light coming in from the window. Set up reflectors on either side of the dish or drink, dark reflectors, not the diffuse translucent one that I put in the chat before. That'll funnel your light in to make sure that there's no light coming in from the sides, right? So then you're automatically creating some shadows on the sides of your subject on the table or chair or whatever it's on. Then in the back, you can put one of those translucent reflectors that I did send a link to. That will bounce some of your light from the back of the dish, or from the back, pardon me, onto the back side of the dish. Therefore, when you look down at the dish, you've got the sunlight streaming in, but then there's also some sunlight streaming back. That creates, the depth of field that you're going to be looking for and takes away the flatness. And like I said, the two dark reflectors on the sides of the dish or drink, that will make sure that there's no light coming in from the sides, and kind of distracting the single source of light. Ideally, you have like the single source of natural light that you kind of play with the bounce board in the back to create the nuance and the kind of nooks and crannies and stuff that you're looking for, rather than just a single flat look. Oh, Jenny Splitter has a great question here. This is something I was actually just struggling with tonight, because I made meatloaf and mashed potatoes for my family for dinner. And I was like, God, I'd love to get a picture of like just some really good mashed potatoes with like some, golden melted Kerrygold on top. Like that's just like, I love that shot. So she asks, any tips for frazzled home cooks trying to capture photos quickly? Jessica, do you want to, I know you have something to say about this because you do it a lot.
I think that the main thing is, because I remember when I first started like food blogging like 10 years ago, I ran into this and I'm like, how do I cook? And I think that especially if you're doing, let's say for an article or even for fun, I would just kind of have an idea in your head. Okay, what are the steps that you want to photograph? And also, when I'm cooking just at home, I'm on the fly. I'm like grabbing stuff like as I go along. But if you are planning to do a shoot, just have a good mise en place and make sure that everything is in the place that you want to be, and set up an area like I had mentioned before, getting a backdrop, or maybe just get a nice, make sure you're, these days, with kids all over the place, like I know it's hard, but have your either your kitchen table or your dining room table set up so that way when you have those steps, they are in a place where there's good light and you can get those shots quickly before you move on to the next step. And for those folks that are also doing video, another tip that I was like last week years old that I figured out, I'm kind of ashamed because I know that this has been around forever, but for those who are doing video, I know it's very difficult to do video and take images, but especially if you're doing, if you're taking a video with an SLR camera, you can import those clips to Photoshop and take high-res screen grabs and also edit them. So if you need to change the lighting, the color, sharpen it a little bit so it looks stills, but I have used a lot of those images to save time from my videos to still photos.
Yeah, I would agree with Jessica. It kind of goes to my point before about having everything set up with the food being the last part of the equation, Jenny. Set up your scene, set up your lighting, set up the look of it before, and even before you start cooking. If there's a section of the kitchen, you can just, doesn't need to be a big space, especially if it's going to be a close up, but just get all that stuff done. And then when your food comes, just put it into place and shoot. It can be hard because, especially if you're cooking for somebody else, you're hungry yourself, they want the food, you want to get it on the table, but you also want your shot. So just get it all done beforehand. Joan wants to know how much is the cost for the season on the restaurant. Joan, I think the question got a little garbled. I'm not quite sure what you're asking. How much it's the cost for a season on the rest? If you wouldn't mind retyping that, Joan, I'm so sorry. I'm not quite sure what the question is, but we're happy to answer it if you put it back in the chat. Jessica, out of curiosity, who are some people that you follow on social or whose work you admire when it comes to food photography?
Geez, there are a lot of folks that I follow, and also a lot of websites. I mean, I love the aesthetic of Food 52.
Yeah.
I love the way they do their shots. There is a guy named Rafi Ruiz. He's based out of Puerto Rico, and because I shoot a lot of Latin food, I love, you know, his aesthetic on how he shoots those photos. I definitely and you know, in terms of local food bloggers, I mean, I love the quality of Justin of DC Food Porn. You know, he uses a lot of color, and I love, you know, the way he sets up those shots. I think he shoots with mirrorless, so
Mhm.
and you know, I don't want to be biased, but I do love Audrey, my my videographer,
Sure.
Audrey Wong. Like her photos are great too.
Yeah. Yeah. I would add, Scott Suchman, who shoots here in DC for Washingtonian and the Post,
And
is
Ray Lopez, I love
Ray
his photos.
Lopez,
Yeah.
shoots for Eater a lot, and
Mhm.
whose pictures I'm sure you've seen elsewhere.
Yeah.
Those are two great photographers. For if you don't follow, you should.
Mhm.
Rick wants to know any tips for shooting big pots of food like soups or stews. Rick, that's a great question. Some of the times those dishes can be, a little too uniform in color. And so, if it's a brown stew or if the components are all a single, it depends. If it's a beautiful shot, a beautiful color, like a pea green soup or something like that, it's still going to be a little too uniform. I would say add accents, whether that's, an oil, a cream, a garnish, and then array around it. You might want to think about doing one of those shots where you're showing off the components of the dish around it, the herbs that go into it, the fresh vegetables that go into it, a open quart of heavy cream, whatever it is. Make that more of a process shot. Make that more of a shot that shows what goes into it. But oftentimes, it's those kinds of surfaces, big pot of soup, garnish it up if you can, or, bring in some extra components that you can float on the surface so they're highlighted. And I think Jessica's going to say something.
Oh no, and I would add like and especially if you're shooting at home, use a pen where the color contrasts. So, you know, I have like a red Le Creuset that has like a white enamel. So if I'm making a stew or something like that white against the stew color contrast. Whereas I also have a black, all black Le Creuset, and it does not, unless I'm making like I made cauliflower soup for a video, and the contrast to the white. But you know, try to find those pots and pans that contrast. And I know that somebody said, how do I manage steam or smoke from a dish? And it's funny because I was just shooting at an Indian restaurant, and they had like a huge pot and the stuff was bubbling all over, and I'm like, oh, I don't want to get that on my lens. But this is where having a step stool comes in handy.
Yeah. No, because that is a great question, Sue and Ed, because, if you get too close to a dish, I've gotten too close to my dishes and, it'll fog my lens and, throw me off my game. Sometimes it's better to shoot a little bit further away and use a telephoto, especially with steam, just so that you don't muck up your equipment when you're trying to get the shot. Okay, Joan has come back and the question is, if we need a few pictures for a website, how much do we have to pay on average? It really varies, Joan. Photographers' rates can sometimes be done by the photo. Oftentimes they're done by the amount of time they spend. They might say they have a 3-hour window or a 6-hour window and you pay accordingly. However many shots he or she can get during that time, that'll be what you get for their rate. And, of course, they'll edit them and send them to you afterwards. Some photographers, work by the shot. It really depends. I wish I could give you like a firm answer, but it depends on the caliber of the photographer that you're using, how experienced they are, that sort of thing. But, I would say if you're going to have someone come in, oh, she says, like you. It honestly, it honestly really depends. Like, because I normally shoot for publications, not for establishments, and I get paid by my publications. And then if I have extra shots, then sometimes I can sell them to the restaurant. But I'm usually there for the publication and I shoot for the publication. So I don't really have a rate for restaurants. But I mean, you know, I've heard anything from $50 to $250 a shot if it's being done by the shot.
Yeah, and I can speak on that. At least like what I dealt with clients, and I mean I've done everything from 250, which is just a few, you know, images, all the way to 1,000 if they want like a whole catalog of images. And you know, it's a factor of time. How many images do you want? Some people don't want them edited. They're just like, hey, just take the photos and I put my filters or whatever it is. So that would be the range that kind of like here between, depending on what you want, between 250 to 1,000.
Yeah, that's a good. Let's see here. Smoker Steam. Any more questions? All right, all right. Well, if you have any, we have a couple of minutes, so I'm not going to shut anyone out prematurely, but if you do have questions, just put them in the chat. Jessica, what's coming up next for you? What can we see next on the blog and on your various channels?
Lots of videos. So I started doing the Dining Traveler cooking series when the pandemic began, doing cooking videos at home, and it kind of took off. So now we just wrapped up a 15 episode series, and we were shooting around Virginia, and we were in Richmond, Charlottesville, Vienna. Whole experience of shooting with masks and cooking in a kitchen, but it's great. And you know, we were trying to highlight a diverse set of independently owned restaurants, and just see what they're, you know, all the awesome things that they've done through this pandemic. And they were teaching me how to do food that sometimes we think is too difficult to make at home, but you know, learned everything from Belgian chocolate mousse to lumpia. So super excited to share that on my channels.
Yeah. When? How long are the episodes, and when can people see them?
So the episodes will be from between 10 and 15 minutes, and we are going to start that launch around mid-April.
Oh, great. And what's the name? Is there a name to the series?
Well, it's just a Dining Traveler cooking series. So every edition that we make has like a twist to it. So so I think this one is like on the road or something or something.
Yeah.
Like that. We're still like figuring out those post-production details.
Honest answer, what was the best thing you ate?
During this
yeah.
We went to this Indian restaurant called Leha in Richmond. If you ever have the opportunity to go, I mean, everything he made was delicious. And after the shoot, he brought all this food, so we just like kind of went crazy.
The bringing of the food, such a joy, such a joy.
Thank you, Jenny, for joining.
Thanks, Jenny. Yeah, and really thank you everyone for joining us. We really appreciate you coming. And if you have any further questions that come up, feel free to ping myself on Twitter, Instagram at Nevin Martell. You can ping Jessica at Dining Traveler on Twitter and Instagram, and you can find her online at diningtraveler.com. You can find me online at nevinmartell.com. Yeah, we've really enjoyed having you. This was such a great evening. Jessica, I learned so much from you tonight, and
Same.
appreciate you taking the time to share your expertise. And yeah, can't wait to check out the new series. Sounds awesome.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to sharing it.
Cool.
And thank you guys so much for tuning in. And I added my email, so if anybody has a question or you know, I love talking, geeking out about camera stuff and photos, and learning from you too. So looking forward to it. And Nevin, thank you so much for inviting me and for being part of this. This was a lot of fun.
Awesome. Well, everybody have a great night. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Be well and stay safe.